disappear, where we don't know what happened. In fact, the official report does not say that the pilot did it. That's just a narrative that's out there. The official report, actually, and if you look at several reports that are out there, one of them specifically says they don't think it's something that the pilot could have done.
Oh no! Sorry, folks, there's a flag on the field. The refs are indicating undue levels of bullshit. Let's check in on the call, shall we?
When you strip away the diplomatic language in Malaysia's final investigation report, the technical record points to one unavoidable conclusion. MH370's disappearance required deliberate human action. The report itself acknowledges a sequence of events that cannot occur without cockpit knowledge and intentional inputs. The transponder shutoff required human interaction with the control panel, turning a physical transponder knob from on to standby. A car's uplink termination, which cannot happen spontaneously, it must be commanded. The Igari turnback, a very tightly executed banked turn inconsistent with any known failure mode and consistent with manual flight only. Autopilot simply cannot make that tight of a turn. Navigation along military radar gaps. The aircraft followed paths that require situational awareness and real-time decision-making. Controlled flight past Penang, stable altitude and airspeed, inconsistent with crew incapacitation. Evading 2 other flights up the Malacca Strait in order to avoid being seen. The investigators even state plainly, these movements are not consistent with any plausible aircraft system failures. But then comes the pivot. After conceding that a human caused the deviation, the report refuses to identify which human. And that omission isn't accidental. Because the moment Malaysia says, the captain did this, the state is effectively admitting negligence in screening, negligence in medical psychological oversight, responsibility for the act of an employee, and by extension, legal liability for 239 deaths. Under ICAO Annex 13, the purpose of a safety investigation is not to assign blame, and Malaysia has used this distinction as a legal firewall. By stating deliberate action, but declining to name the actor, Malaysia preserves protection from wrongful death lawsuits, insulation under state immunity, political stability domestically, and diplomatic deniability internationally. So the report is split down the middle. The forensic facts point to a controlled, intentional diversion by an experienced and skilled aviator on the flight deck. But the political and legal realities prevent the state from putting a name in the report. It's a document that tells you what happened, while very carefully avoiding telling you who did it.
So I would say at least the experts that have reviewed it, and I've spoken to several of them, are mixed on the idea that the pilot could have pulled this off, at least by themselves. But they do all agree that the plane was under manual control. And so this leaves this gray, vague area about, okay, well, what potentially did happen to the plane? Sorry, what was the second part?
The debris that was retrieved and found.
Oh, the debris. Yeah, the debris is probably, that's the most interesting thing, because if you just look at it from a physics perspective, where the debris was found, distance from the debris to where the search area was, it's thousands of kilometers. And it's west. If you just go look at the ocean currents, they flow to the east. It's not a stretch to say that the vast majority of the debris should have washed ashore in Western Australia. And nobody was looking in Africa because nobody thought debris would ever show up in Africa. And that's why a random guy named Blaine Gibson finds the debris in Africa. And actually, this was kind of a shock in the media because nobody was thinking the debris should be showing up there.
Right.
Oh no! Sorry, folks, there's a flag on the field. The refs are indicating undue levels of bullshit. Let's check in on the call, shall we?
For the 389th and final fucking time, Ashton, let's go over ocean drift analysis and oceanic currents. Here's how Ashton approaches ocean currents. He looks at a flat map, notices that Australia is physically closer to the 7th arc region than Africa, and immediately concludes, well, obviously the debris should have washed up in Australia, case closed. In fairness, however, That's how Ashton approaches any branch of science, so I suppose it's to be expected. Nevertheless, this is what happens when your entire research method is Step 1, look at map. Step 2, stop thinking. Because in Ashton land, oceans don't have gyres, currents, eddies, winds, or seasonal variability. They just flow straight toward whatever is closest to your finger on a JPEG. Here's the problem, though. The actual ocean doesn't behave like a middle school globe. It obeys physics, not Ashton's intuition. And the physics says this. The southern Indian Ocean is dominated by the South Indian Ocean gyre, a massive counterclockwise circulation. That system sends surface debris from the seventh arc westward, not eastward, not toward Australia. West. Motherfucking west. Toward Madagascar, Tanzania, Mozambique, Mauritius, Réunion. Exactly where the debris was found. More than 60 pieces now in all. And here's the part that makes this even more embarrassing for Ashton, and frustrating to those who care about actually finding the plane. Ashton posts drift modeling images, thinking that they support him, when in reality, they were literally created by Professor Charitha Pattiarachi, one of the world's leading oceanographers. And Pattiarachi's own models show debris moving west, not east. The graphics Ashton shares actually disprove his claim in bright neon colors. It's like citing a calculator to prove 2 + 2 = 5. Oh, and when Blaine Gibson went exploring for debris from the wreckage of MH370, here's the other big kick in the nuts. Blaine didn't just go to random beaches in Africa. He went and met with Pattiarachi first to consult with the world's leading expert on ocean drift modeling.
I talked to oceanographers. I said, well, I want to go find more debris. Where should I go? And they said, there will be debris in the Mozambique Channel on the coast of Mozambique. Go there and maybe you'll get lucky. And that's what I did.
He asked him, where should I go? Where will I have the best chance of finding debris? And, as another aside to this here aside, the reason that no countries had any search efforts for debris washed ashore is because Malaysia never once asked. They never contacted Madagascar, Tanzania, Mozambique, Mauritius, Réunion, or any other country or territory and asked them to be on the lookout for aircraft debris. This is precisely why Blaine Gibson took it upon himself to do so, because no one else had or was going to. Let's recap what the real world demonstrated. The flaperon washed up exactly where Pattiarachi predicted. Then more debris washed up where the models predicted. Then even more debris washed up where the models predicted. And exactly 0 confirmed MH370 debris pieces ever washed up on Australia's coastline. So when Ashton says debris should have gone east, he is not arguing with me. He is arguing with NOAA's real-time drifter buoy data, Cicero's validated drift models, the Indian Ocean Observing System, Charitha Pattiarachi's predictions, and the actual debris recovered in the real, physical world. At some point, you have to ask, if your theory requires the Indian Ocean to reverse itself just for you, maybe the problem isn't the ocean. Maybe the problem is the theory. Or, more precisely, the theorist.
And it wasn't just one piece. Every single piece of debris that was found, there's about 3 that are supposedly confirmed. One, the Reunion Island piece that you're talking about, the flap, that's the only one that they matched with the serial number. And it was not a unique number related to that specific part on that plane. That was just a part number for a flap. But they said, okay, well, it's a 777 or 77 flap. It's got to be that plane. I think it is. In fact, I argue the videos you see are the only thing that can explain the debris showing up in Africa. Because that plane needs to go into the water somewhere not in the search zone, someone much further to the west. somewhere either in the middle of the Indian Ocean or near to Africa for that debris to show up in those locations in just over like a year.
Oh no! Sorry, folks, there's a flag on the field. The refs are indicating undue levels of bullshit. Let's check in on the call, shall we?
So, according to Ashton, in order for debris to wash up in Africa, the crash site would have had to be much farther west than the search zone. And critically, that this means that his theory, if you can even call it that, is the only one that makes sense, based on where the vast majority of MH370 debris has washed up. But here's the problem he never addresses. His own fake videos put the teleport or impact at or near the Nicobar Islands. And longitude-wise? That's basically the same as the official search zone. Barely any difference at all. If the plane really was teleported at Nicobar like he claims, then any debris would have remained in that region, not drifted thousands of miles west onto African beaches. You don't get African landfall from a Nicobar impact. You get debris staying in the eastern Indian Ocean. So either 1, the debris is real, in which case Nicobar makes no sense, or 2, Nicobar is true, in which case the debris makes no sense. His own geography cancels out his own story, which is probably why he's always changing it on the fly.
It wasn't like it's not like 5 years later we find it in Africa. It's like, oh, like a year later, like, wait, how did this get here so fast? So this is the thing. If you actually go to the other theories, basically none of the theories can explain that debris. Jeff Wise thinks the plane went to Russia. He thinks that some Russian guy hijacked it, flew it to Russia secretly. Like, he can't explain the debris. That's why he goes after Blaine Gibson in the Netflix documentary. Florence DeChangy thinks that the plane was shot down in the South China Sea, and they just picked up all the debris. Like, she can't explain. She needs that to be fake as well. Even the people that think the plane went down the South Indian Ocean, where they've been searching, if you just do the math in terms of like how far debris can actually flow without the wind like pushing it, which is what the models assume, there's no way it got that far in that time, especially going against the currents.
Oh no! Sorry, folks, there's a flag on the field. The refs are indicating undue levels of bullshit. Let's check in on the call, shall we?
Okay, not to belabor the issue, but at this point I'm obligated by God as well as my own sanity to ask the question straight out. Where in the actual fuck is Ashton getting his ocean drift data? Because every time he opens his mouth about ocean currents, it sounds less like science and more like improv. He doesn't cite models. He doesn't reference real oceanographers. He doesn't even acknowledge the people whose graphics he screenshots and misreads. He just decides what he needs to be true, says it with just enough confidence and just matter-of-factly enough, and hopes nobody bothers to verify anything. Meanwhile, actual professionals, people like Charitha Patiarachi, spent years modeling the drift patterns of the southern Indian Ocean, the same ones that explain the debris perfectly. Ashton's authority comes entirely from rearranging the outcome to fit whatever storyline he's pushing this week. So the real question isn't, which way did the debris drift? The real question is, should anyone be treating Ashton as if he has even the slightest fucking clue how ocean currents work?
Then to my original point, and I'll let you just jump in, is none was found in Australia. We should have found at least the bulk of the debris in Australia. And then lastly, where is the plane exactly? Because a couple pieces, even if you take all those pieces, 20, that's like taking my finger and being like, oh yeah, we found you. Like, I could just cut my finger off. In fact, all those pieces, if you add them up, that doesn't even mean the plane crashed. That's how little debris we found.
Oh no! Sorry, folks, there's a flag on the field. The refs are indicating undue levels of bullshit. Let's check in on the call, shall we?
Ashton loves to throw out the same old line. So then, where's the plane? As if that settles anything. But here's the part he never mentions. In 11.5 years, we've only searched for MH370 twice. Just 2 search attempts. That's it. The last one ended in 2018. There's been no continuous search, no repeated sweeps, no multi-decade push. No searching for 8 to 10 months a year every year. Just 2 search efforts. And in spite of all of that, we've still recovered more than 60 confirmed and highly credible pieces of debris. Not 30, like Ashton keeps repeating, 60. Literally double the number he thinks. Now let's talk about the ocean itself, because this is where the "just find the plane" crowd really betray their ignorance. The southern Indian Ocean isn't a swimming pool. It is one of the most remote, hostile, and geologically complex stretches of water on planet fucking Earth. Parts of the search area sit along Broken Ridge, which is full of canyons, sharp cliffs, jagged ridgelines, and sheer drop-offs thousands of meters deep. It is pitch black, freezing cold, and the seafloor is anything but flat. Finding a broken-apart plane down there is unimaginably difficult, borderline impossible without incredibly specific data. For the perspective that one really needs in order to understand the task at hand, we needn't look any further than the tragedy of Air France 447. The BEA knew exactly where the A330 impacted the Atlantic. They had real-time telemetry. They had immediate floating debris. They had a tight, well-defined search box. Yet and still, it took over 2 years and multiple search missions to find the wreckage of 447. Even more incredible? Their towed pinger locator, the equipment literally designed to listen for the black box, passed directly over the spot where the flight data recorder was multiple times and never registered the signal. That's how easy it is to miss something on the sea floor, even when you know precisely what you're looking for and exactly where to look. Now compare that to MH370. We don't have an exact crash location. We didn't have surface debris from day one to narrow the zone. We don't have telemetry, and our search area is exponentially larger. So when someone asks, "Where's the plane?" the honest answer is simple. It's in one of the most remote and geologically complex regions on Earth, and we've only looked for it twice. Finding MH370 isn't a matter of doubt. It's a matter of time, resources, and the sheer reality of deep ocean search. The ocean doesn't give up its secrets readily. It demands more than most people can possibly imagine. The Titanic, another tragedy where we knew the precise location, laid searched for, yet unfound by man for more than 73 years. Yet no one ever presumed that it never actually sank simply because we hadn't yet located the wreckage on the Atlantic seabed. The question isn't if we'll ever find MH370. The question is when. And with a new search by Ocean Infinity slated to begin, more or less any day now, using significantly better technology and a renewed and refined search area, there's fair reason to believe that it might be sooner rather than later.
So what are you implying then? What do you think it is? Like, I mean, you kind of teased that you think some of the debris might be off the plane. Is that right? Like, would you say
I think all of it is. I think there's a Rolls-Royce engine cowling found in South Africa. Look at how far you probably think of the Reunion Island piece of debris, the flap, because it's the biggest piece, which is definitely a significant one, because it shows kind of the general direction in which the debris went. And I mean, if you look at where Diego Garcia is, a military base, it's a perfect match for the flow of the debris. But the piece that really can't be explained is a Rolls-Royce engine con, big RR on it. Giant piece of an engine like that, the edge of an engine. And it's found in South Africa. That is super far away, like in the wrong direction of the ocean currents. How did that get down there? And what other Rolls-Royce engine cowling could that be? It's got to be from MH370. Has to be.
Yeah.
So to me, the logical conclusion is that plane went into the water closer to Africa.
Oh no! Sorry, folks. There's a flag on the field. The refs are indicating undue levels of bullshit. Let's check in on the call, shall we?
Oh? Near Africa now? Wait. So, not teleported? Not orb vaporized? Not hauled through a cosmic stargate by invisible UFO forklifts? Which manic fucking lore book are we on this week? You see, Here's the part Ashton hopes no one notices. You can't have 60-plus pieces of real physical wreckage and a plane that was zapped into a portal. That's not a theory. That's a motherfucking stroke. We have the flaperon, flap fairing, stabilizer fragments, cabin wall panels, seat components, luggage, flooring, engine cowlings, the works. Everything you'd expect from a high-energy ocean impact. And what do they all show? No burn patterns, no scorch marks, no plasma residue, no weapon signatures of any kind. Nothing. Just hydrodynamic impact breakup and drift wear. If this portal fantasy were real, the debris should look like it came out of a crematorium. Instead, it looks exactly like every ocean crash debris field ever studied. Meanwhile, Ashton is out here playing whack-a-mole with his own claims. Orb disintegration, until debris shows up. Teleportation, until debris shows up. Energy weapon, until debris shows up. Crash near Africa, because he saw debris maps made by the very oceanographer who said the crash was not near Africa. Every time reality punches him in the mouth, he just invents a new timeline where the previous one doesn't count. Sorry, but if the debris is real, the plane wasn't teleported. If the plane wasn't teleported, the orbs didn't vaporize it. And if the orbs didn't vaporize it, Ashton's entire sci-fi multiverse collapses like a cheap lawn chair. Pick a lane, Trey. Or sit this one the fuck out. Because the only thing disappearing here is the plot consistency of this fucking story.
And here's some more evidence that supports that theory. A fire suppression bottle washes ashore in the Maldives. It had to be empty for it to wash ashore. The fire suppression bottle looks like one of those cartoon bombs from when I was a little kid. It looks so unusual. It's completely unique. Perfect match to a Boeing 777 fire suppression bottle. Why does that get rejected? Why does that just get ignored? Why did the defense minister say, when asked about it, say, no, that's not related? What is not related? That's like finding the debris in Africa and say, no, that's not related either. There's a random Boeing 777 fire suppression bottle found in the exact place where this plane disappeared just 2 weeks ago. It has a serial number on it. We're not going to look into that. Literal visible serial number you can just see in the pictures because islanders took photos of it.
So that suppression bottle with the serial number was able to be traced back to that plane, like clearly.
They never looked into it, and to this day, they just basically threw that evidence away.
Because
there's more evidence. I suspect. Go ahead.
Oh no! Sorry, folks. There's a flag on the field. The refs are indicating undue levels of bullshit. Let's check in on the call, shall we?
All right, we've officially arrived at the part where Ashton can tell that the whole MH370 expert aura is beginning to escape him. So he just wholesale invents bullshit that he thinks will make him sound smarter and give him a little bit of gravitas. Ashton has no experience, education, or expertise in any facet of the aviation industry. Zero. None at all. Nevertheless, he opines on it as if he does, as if every aviation investigator and expert are simply not up to the task, that they don't know their job the way that some random IT nerd does. Let's rip this one rather quick because I've about had it with this jag-off. That so-called fire suppression bottle in the Maldives? Yes, it has stamped markings on it. You can see them in the photos. But nobody has ever published a readable serial or part number, and when local experts did look them up, they said they didn't match any Boeing components. The investigators never logged it as MH370 debris, never even as confirmed aircraft hardware, because it wasn't aircraft hardware. So treating that Barra beach ball as hidden proof of anything is pure fan fiction. Perfectly on brand for Ashton. Be honest. You're beginning to see the pattern here, aren't you?
There are other plane crashes as well. So if there are debris like flush, I wouldn't say that automatically it has to be off this plane. So okay, so let's assume for a second that you're implying that this debris is from this plane. How does that? Can you explain how that links to the teleportation theory that you're obviously representing and standing for?
And I wish it wasn't teleportation, because it would be way easier to convince people that they're just annihilating the plane. In fact, sometimes I think that maybe it is just annihilation. Maybe they have antimatter. Maybe that's what's going on, and just antimatter is the plane. But no, just physics means that
By the Queen's crusty slippers, blast my biscuits and stuff me in a Tesco bag! We've got yet another flag on the field. The refs are signalling this one's going to be an unsportsmanlike penalty on the visitors. Christ on a bicycle! These penalty flags sure are going to have to go into the wash after this one. What with how many times they're hitting the pitch today and all.
All right, Trey, quit fucking trolling us. This whole making up altered buzzwords that aren't even grounded in pseudoscience bullshit is really beginning to wear thin. We get that you can get away with this low-effort move because your low IQ followers will lap it up, but the moment you step out of that MH370X sandbox, you're no longer in your safe space. You're in the real world. And the real world abides only so much bullshit before it begins to push back and say, explain yourself. Defend the claim you just made. Antimatters is not a thing. It's not a verb, it's not a process, and it's definitely not something you can do to a Boeing 777. In actual physics, antimatter is not a sci-fi weapon you can just point at objects all willy-nilly. It's simply the opposite of matter. And when matter and antimatter touch, they annihilate one another into pure energy. That's real physics. But the amount of antimatter you'd need to annihilate a jetliner is so absurdly large that not even the entire global physics community could produce or store it. CERN produces atoms of antimatter, individual particles, not plain destroying buckets of the stuff. So when Ashton says things like, maybe they did just antimatter the plane, he's not using physics. He's just freestyling buzzwords and hoping nobody notices, much less calls him out on it. There is no such thing as an antimatter weapon, an antimatter beam, antimattering a plane, a military antimatter zapper, or an antimatter portal strike. None of these exist in physics, engineering, or the real fucking world. They exist in Mass Effect, Star Trek, and middling YouTube Grifter lore. And if MH370 had actually been annihilated by antimatter, you wouldn't have 60-plus pieces of debris washing up on beaches from Madagascar to South Africa. Matter-antimatter annihilation leaves zero debris. It converts mass into radiation, wholly, completely, and unambiguously. So the moment Trey says maybe it just antimatters the plane, he's telling you, loud as shit, that he has no idea what antimatter is, how it behaves, or what the word even means outside of comic books.
we have conservation in physics. So if those are real, those videos are somehow real, which they are because it's just military footage, then that means that plane has to be somewhere else. If one piece, many pieces, doesn't matter. That mass and energy has to be somewhere else. So it can be time dilated. So that means it can disappear here and there can be a delay and it can reappear over here. It can be instantaneous. But that is physically possible. Do we have the way to engineer it? A lot of people could argue, no, of course, it's way super advanced. But maybe we are seeing it or some version of it in those videos. That means that plane can be anywhere else. And now that's kind of like cheating. That's like me saying, okay, they can just zap plane and now it can just be anywhere. It can be in the Andromeda Galaxy. It can be on the moon. I don't feel comfortable with that explanation. Mostly because of the way the orbs spin around the plane. When they're spinning around the plane, they're first spinning around it in a spherical motion, which to me looks like they're mapping it. I don't know if that's what they're doing, but they change. And then they start going vertical around the plane, perfectly vertical around the plane. And then the last moments they converge. Just like if I was going to pinch something. But in this case, it's an electromagnetic pinch. And in the other video, right when the same zap appears, you can see the reflection of the tail of the plane sticking out of what people think is a VFX effect, whatever. And it means it's going backwards a little bit.
By the Queen's crusty slippers, blast my biscuits and stuff me in a Tesco bag! We've got yet another flag on the field. The refs are signalling this one's going to be an unsportsmanlike penalty on the visitors. Christ on a bicycle! These penalty flags sure are going to have to go into the wash after this one. What with how many times they're hitting the pitch today and all.
At this point in Ashton's explanation, there's honestly not much left to break down. It's just pure, unfiltered bullshit. Cosmic word salad tossed together to distract you from the fact that none of it actually means anything. Strong with this grifter, the Kamala vibes are. And, just as an aside, this part here is low-key one of my favorites, because it begins to illustrate exactly why it is that this is as close to a debate as Ashton's willing to get. He may well be an idiot, but he's no dummy. Ashton knows exactly how he'd fare in a real debate against someone who is committed to clearly, consistently, and fairly pushing back against his bullshit claims. He knows it like you know when you're hungry or tired. He knows it deep in his bones. But I digress. He then gets to the Orbs, and he proudly points out that they spin perfectly around the plane. And, yeah, no shit, Sherlock. Of course they spin perfectly. That's what happens when you animate fake as fuck objects and lock them to a motion path in After Effects or whichever video editing software was used to composite this trash. Real objects in the real world don't move in flawless, mathematically precise orbits around a 777 at altitude. But CGI does, especially when someone literally tells the program, make these little glowing balls spin around this model. So when Ashton tries to frame that perfection as proof of something mind-bending, all he's really doing is accidentally confessing how obviously fake the video is. Oops, that's my bad there. That last little clip wasn't from the video that was uploaded to a since-deleted YouTube account that featured exclusively debunked paranormal videos. That was a breakdown video by Krishley, who, if you don't follow, you really should. Anyway, what Krishley just showed us is absolutely devastating for the magic orb nutters. The so-called Orbs literally cross in front of the camera reticle, multiple fucking times. Listen to that once more. Not behind the scene. Not behind the optics. They're sliding right over a 2D HUD graphic like cheap sticker emojis. Real objects in the real fucking world don't phase through on-screen overlays. Bad compositing sure as shit does, however. So when you see these plasma orbs drifting over the reticle, that's not evidence of secret tech. That's evidence someone stacked their CGI layers in the wrong order and hit export without realizing their error. Congratulations. The great dog shit cosmic mystery just got fuckered by a basic VFX oopsie.
Hey folks, one last brief pause here to share with you a new product that's absolutely banging off its trolley. You've heard us gush about Portal Strike Dynamics before, and you know their products are as posh as a peacock on payday. But wait until you get a load of this one. It's properly mega brilliant, innit?
You ever notice how every military contractor says their technology is classified? Like everything. You ask them how the machine works, and they just give you that look. You know the look. Sorry, buddy, can't tell you. National security.
At Portal Strike Dynamics, we believe your safety is worth protecting with tech so advanced, we're not legally allowed to explain it. Mostly because we're pretty sure it doesn't work. But that didn't stop the DoD from giving us a contract in 1989. So why should it stop you?
Portal Strike features 2 interdimensional vortex orbs. Are they real? Who the hell knows? We bought them from a guy in Ohio who said they came from a weather balloon accident. He also sold churros on the side. The whole thing looks amazing though. Blue lights, a hum so low you can barely hear it, a big red button marked "Do Not Press," which means, of course, you're definitely gonna press it.
Portal Strike was designed specifically to protect you and your loved ones from intruders, burglars, extra-dimensional entities, your neighbor Dave, or basic physics. However, our lawyers tell us that we have to say that Portal Strike does not guarantee protection from intruders, burglars, extra-dimensional entities, your neighbor Dave, or basic physics. But the important thing is that it feels like it does.
And really, isn't that what home security is all about? Feeling safe? Even if the machine you installed is basically a prop from a canceled sci-fi pilot?
Portal Strike. Defend your home, in theory. Now available in 3 models: the Gorgon Stare Lite, the Anutronic Deluxe, and the classified Black Budget Edition, which is literally just a cardboard box with a padlock. Portal Strike Dynamics. Defending your home, in theory. Portal Strike Dynamics is a registered bullshit subsidiary of EtherTech LLC. This product is not intended for use outside of Narnia.
Now, the crazy part is if you actually take electrical engineering principles, the right-hand rule in electrical engineering, and you assume those are balls of energy spinning around the plane, you just apply the right-hand rule. The vector of the force, basically the right-hand rule is like taking 3 right angles. The vector of the force would send that plane backwards. And the oddest part is you have coordinates in that Gorgon Stare footage, the footage that we thought was satellite, that's called satellite video.
I'm aware of
There's
that.
coordinates in it. And from the coordinates, you can actually map the direction of the plane, the real direction of the plane that somebody was tracking. And that means that plane going backwards is going to the west. So we know that coordinates is the Nicobar Islands, the real location of the plane, like 20 minutes after the last radar. Or last military radar, and if it's going to the west, then it can easily be somewhere in the Maldives. And Maldives is the west over there. So that's the theory: is that there's some kind of teleportation. Maybe it's like a thermonuclear weapon. Is my most, I guess, recent theory. You could say it's a thermonuclear weapon, that a clean fusion bomb that manipulates space-time, and it can teleport an object from one place to the next.
All right.
Does the plane come out in one piece on the other side? There's no way I can know that without seeing the videos on the other side. But I'll tell you, I'm very confident there's videos on the other side, just like those videos, of a plane reappearing.
But then you mentioned that you think the plane hit the water. So how does that make sense? So you think the plane was teleported and then hit the water after? That's what you said earlier. You said, I think that's where the plane hit the water, and that's...
Okay,
what,
I'll clarify.
Okay.
Yeah.
By the Queen's crusty slippers! Blast my biscuits and stuff me in a Tesco bag! We've got yet another flag on the field! The refs are signalling this one's going to be an unsportsmanlike penalty on the visitors. Christ on a bicycle! These penalty flags sure are going to have to go into the wash after this one, what with how many times they're hitting the pitch today and all.
So here's where everything completely falls apart. Ashton confidently says the plane must have crashed somewhere, maybe farther west, maybe near the Maldives, maybe in the water somewhere over there. But hold on, just hold on. This is the same guy who's been telling everyone for years that MH370 was teleported through a portal, zapped, vanished, taken, whatever the sci-fi adjective of the week is. So the sneezing monkey stops him. Which is it, Ashton? Did it crash? Or was it teleported? And immediately, Ashton panics. He goes, well, no, not necessarily. I mean, that's not exactly what I... And you can literally watch him start clawing his way out of the contradiction he just created. And this is exactly what happens when someone is never challenged by anyone. When you refuse to debate anyone. When you consider this a debate. When your theory isn't actually a theory, but a constantly rotating playlist of whatever conspiracy idea gets you through the next 30 seconds of conversation. When you're not beholden to facts, not beholden to evidence, not beholden to reality. When you're beholden only to yourself and your own manic whims. And especially when your followers never push back, because in the MH370X community, if you question Ashton, you get kicked out. Simple as that. Iron sharpens iron. But Ashton doesn't do iron. He does improv. And this is what it looks like when improv finally runs into its own contradictions. The improv show ends.
Either the plane crashed right there, came out in a million pieces, and just, there you go, there's your debris.
Experiment failed.
Or it came out in one piece, right? And then it crashed because the pilot was a zombie person or whatever happens when you teleport somebody. Or maybe they come out and he's still just flying. Maybe the plane just comes out the exact same speed as it came in, and the pilot doesn't even realize. All of a sudden, the pilot's just in a different location, and they're like, whoa, okay. And they just keep flying. And the plane is in trouble. This plane is smoking. You can see the smoke coming out of it. Actually, it's wrapping around the hull of the plane from the bottom. I actually spoke to another expert that realized that smoke is coming out of the AC exhaust ports underneath the plane on the Boeing 777. And it's wrapping around the hulls here. And
By the Queen's crusty slippers! Blast my biscuits and stuff me in a Tesco bag! We've got yet another flag on the field! The refs are signalling this one's going to be an unsportsmanlike penalty on the visitors. Christ on a bicycle! These penalty flags sure are going to have to go into the wash after this one, what with how many times they're hitting the pitch today and all.
And now we reach one of Ashton's all-time classics, the part where he insists the video shows smoke pouring out from under the 777. And look, if this claim had stayed one version, maybe we could treat it like an argument. But Ashton can't even stay consistent for 48 hours. Remember? This used to be smoke coming from both engines. That was his banner claim. He repeated it endlessly. Ever since my MH370 flight path explainer rebuttal video was published, however, where I showed exactly where smoke actually vents on a Boeing 777, those environmental control system exhaust ports on the belly. Suddenly Ashton's like, "Oh yeah, that's what I meant. The belly vents, obviously." No, man. No. You can't fail a test and then change the answer key and pretend you got an A. But wait, it gets better. Because now Ashton says he confirmed all of this with an expert. Ooh, fancy, mysterious, very credible. Except he didn't. He didn't speak to anyone. He didn't email anyone. He didn't message anyone. What happened is a random Twitter user, a guy whose expertise is probably limited to arguing about crypto at 3 a.m., replied to him with a guess. And Ashton instantly promoted that to expert consultation. Like, bro, a Twitter reply is not peer review. You don't get to cite at Flat Earth 69 as an aerospace authority. And the cherry on top? This new expert theory he grabbed says the AC system is somehow circulating smoke and making it pour out the bottom, which sounds like something someone would say if they'd never been inside a 777, looked at a 777, or even Googled a diagram of a 777. None of it adds up. None of it matches real systems, real physics, or real smoke behavior. It only matches one thing: a CGI asset soaked in rank desperation. At this point, Ashton isn't analyzing anything. He's just speed-running excuses. It's improv night at the Nut House, and Trey's bombing harder than the IDF in Gaza.
The reason why that plane, we can even see that plane, because it's a drone recording it from above, is because it's actually really low to the water. It's only like 1,000 to 5,000 feet. You can see the cumulus clouds that are super low. They like barely even show up on weather radar. So this plane's flying low. So if it comes on the other side really low too, I mean, boom.
Might have happened.
You know, maybe it can recover. I don't know, man.
Fair enough. Let's talk about the footage, right? We talked about the two pieces of footage. One is that alleged drone footage, and the other one is the Gorgon Stair footage, right? These are the two things. Maybe let's start with the drone footage. Let's go through that a little bit and some of the allegations there. So obviously, we have quite a few people alleging that the footage we see is CGI. All going back to, I think, the initial visual video of the Courier crew, right? Who made some, in my opinion, some valid points, but feel free to rebuke that in a minute. Let's go through some of them. Like, for example, the drone that we see on the left-hand side clearly has polygonal shapes to it. We can see that it's not a round shape as you would find it on a real drone. In the footage, you see polygonal edges to the head, the hood, or whatever it is of the drone. What is your take on that? Why would you see that? And by the way, just sorry, before you jump in, not only that, also the heat map the heat map, the alleged heat map of this front of the drone that we see in the drone footage matches exactly where the seams go of this particular drone model that has been found in 3D libraries. Why does that match, and why is there polygonal edges to that?
The polygonal edges claim, I'm just going to say, is not true. I haven't seen any evidence of that. I think I have seen that claim, but I haven't seen any evidence that actually supports the claim. With respect to the model, why does a model of a drone match a real drone? I mean, because they're the same thing. Somebody did a good job matching a drone. I mean, why do I see a heat signature, little red heat signature, exactly where the drone opens up, where there's computer parts right there that are going to heat up in real life? Somebody was just paid so much attention to detail. They were like, hey, I'm going to add this little red heat signature right here on the drone. Or why do we see the wing actually shake? Why did someone go to the effort of making the wing shake to have real turbulence and increase when the drone goes underneath the wake of the real MH370? Why, in fact, when the operator zooms in, you can see the operator is manually controlling the camera. Some of those, a lot of those cameras are actually automatic, but they're doing it manually here, and you can clearly tell that.
By the Queen's crusty slippers, blast my biscuits and stuff me in a Tesco bag! We've got yet another flag on the field. The refs are signalling this one's going to be an unsportsmanlike penalty on the visitors. Christ on a bicycle! These penalty flags sure are going to have to go into the wash after this one. What with how many times they're hitting the pitch today and all.
Ashton's latest revelation is that the camera shake is too authentic of a detail, and obviously no one would ever add that. Yeah, sure, man. Because adding camera shake, one of the most basic VFX tools on Earth, is just unthinkable. I want to play for you now a little video clip. This is a Jetstrike tutorial posted on YouTube on March 23, 2014, 2 weeks after MH370 vanished, literally showing you how to add shake, wiggle, motion blur, all of it. It's made by Tuts Plus, shout out to them. And it walks beginners through the exact techniques used in these fake videos, step by step. As you watch these tutorials, there's a handful of others as well, all published before the MH370 videos were uploaded to YouTube. You can almost visualize exactly how it was that these videos were made. Someone bought the Video Copilot Jetstrike pack, loaded it into After Effects, Blender, Lightwave 3D, or another similar such program, and then just followed along, step by step, trying to learn how to do VFX video compositing and editing. Meanwhile, Ashton, who has never touched VFX software, talks like he's the goddamn supervisor at Industrial Light and Magic and cracked cosmic physics on the side.
Color tones to both. And to top it all off, let's add some noise. On our adjustment layer, I'm going to set it also at 4%. And I'm going to turn color noise off. And what this is going to do is basically imitate the film look. I'm going to take a quick RAM preview of this. And there you go, a few little quick simple effects that are really going to help our composite look a lot more realistic. Now I'm just going to talk about a few more quick tips that are going to help you along the way with your Jetstrike animation. The first one being applying a little bit of wiggle actually to the X and Y position of your jet. So if we go to our element layer and go up here to XY position, you can alt click on that and just type in wiggle. I'm going to do 1 and 10 pixels. And what this will do is just add a little bit of movement to your jet so it's not quite as stiff. And, if you ever have a shot where the camera is perfectly still filming the jet, this will kind of help sell it. It's kind of hitting a little bit of turbulence in the air. The next thing I want to talk about, I'm going to jump into another scene here. And what I've got is a jet flying past the camera. I'll do a quick RAM preview of this. So we can see the jet flying past the camera at a pretty fast rate of speed. Well, if we turn on motion blur for a composition, if we have motion blur on for element, and we can really see some shuddering here going on, and it's going to be really bad when a plane flies close by the camera like this. And so what you can do is in element, under the motion blur samples, you're probably going to have to turn this up quite a bit, especially like I said, if a plane is flying right past your camera. See if we even turn this up to 24. Under full resolution, we can still even see a little bit of shuddering going on right here. So this will probably be plenty good though for an animation that we had, because most people aren't going to notice that. If you have to, worst case scenario, turn this up to 48. That's about as high as I ever put it. But I would always recommend at least keeping it on 12, regardless of whatever it's going to be. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is use some dust wave footage from the Action Essentials pack. If you guys have that, or if you have any other dust footage like this, what we can do is put this on top of our footage and basically simulate a cloud as if the plane flies through the cloud, and we'll get some movement. And this realism is really going to help sell the scene quite a bit. So I'm going to drag this dust wave footage on top of everything. And in this instance here, the dust color actually kind of matches the scene well, so I'll probably leave that the way it is. But if you need to make it look more like a cloud, I usually just apply the tint effect, and that'll really make it white. You can also add a curves effect to bring out the alpha to make it pop a little bit better. I'll probably set this at about 50 actually. And what I'll do is I'll get to the point where the dust is spread out pretty good, and also a point where the plane is about to pass the camera. And with our dust layer selected, I'll hit Control-Shift-D, and that's going to split our footage layer. And on this bottom half, I'm going to right-click, go to Time, and do Freeze Frame. What this is going to do is freeze this dust layer, which we're wanting to look like a cloud. So it's going to look stationary, but when the plane flies past it, it's going to get to the footage where the dust is moving. And let's do a RAM preview and take a look at this. And there you go. You can see the effect this adds to our scene. Really helps sell it and makes it look a lot more realistic.
How come the shake increases when the operator zooms in? Just like real life. Almost like it's a real video. And the camera shakes a bunch. And why the operator even loses tracking of the plane because he's manually tracking it. And the plane goes off the view for a second as well. Actually indicates the video might be cropped because he does such a good job that he zooms in while the plane goes off the screen. And it comes back, and now it's zoomed in even more, meaning the operator is actually still able to track that plane, even though what we're seeing didn't have the plane on it. So there's some pretty crazy details. Somebody made up all those details of a real plane. And here's another one, because you like details of the videos. When they zoom in on the plane, you can see the front door of the plane, you can see the back door of the plane and the heat signatures, and amazingly, all 6 air conditioning distribution manifolds where they pump air through the cabin of the plane. There's 6 of them exactly, and you can see all 6 of them on the heat signature because it has a different temperature than the rest of the skin of the plane. That's incredible. Was the person who faked the video a Boeing 777 expert? And they love thermal imagery?
Well, I would argue that the doors and things like that probably emanate from the video, because what that filter that is alleged to have used here, which is an After Effects filter, that it amplifies the geometry of the model. That's basically what it does. So if you would have doors on that model, which you obviously would have, those would be amplified. Same with the drone, where you see the heat signature exactly mirroring where the object of the 3D model kind of meets, right? So that's kind of the implication, I guess. But I hear your points. It's fair, you know.
Well, let me just say, like, something this incredible. I'm not a crazy person. I came out of nowhere. The reason why I came out of nowhere is because I'm just a normal person who just happened to figure this out. And I understand that something this incredible, you're never, ever going to convince everybody. Even if the government came out and admitted it was real, a huge percentage of people, maybe even a lot of your followers, still wouldn't believe it. Maybe they especially wouldn't believe it if the government came out and said it wasn't real. The reason why it's so easy for me to defend that is because I know those videos are real. So it's like for me to try to get you to, like, me saying, hey, that video of you, that's fake, man. And you being like, how am I going to defend this to this guy, right? Like, there's a lot of easy ways I can do that, like all the things I just pointed out. But at the end of the day, it's going to be up to you. I mean, you know, did somebody fake 2 perfectly in sync military videos in 2 different angles, meaning it requires a 3-dimensional render because you can see these orbs spinning around the plane?
So here's the thing. So I work
background image of some helicopters, and I thought, well, I want to add my own helicopter. So I did. This helicopter is being rendered inside of the Element render engine, and it looks pretty dang good. So the way it's been set up is I've imported it, and I just have 3 lights. So I have a fill light, I have the sunlight, and then I just have an ambient light. And it's looking really, really good. So if I shut the motion blur off here, we can take a look at how this is set up. So you can see the propeller blades are rotating. So I guess maybe I need to keep the motion blur on. We can see the propeller blades are rotating, and the object is also being able to be moved around. Now remember, Element only allows you to import static 3D objects. So all of the rigging for the helicopter has been done right inside of Element. So let's take a look at that right now. So we've got this helicopter, it's fully three-dimensional, and we even have a couple of little pilots in there. I saw the pilots in the back.
A little bit in special effects, so I know how this stuff works. That's not that challenging, okay? Like to do 2 renders that have the same timing.
Man.
It's not super challenging. It follows the same timeline. There are certain events that have to happen in the timeline at certain moments. It's not incredibly hard to do factually. Like to have 2 videos, like one is that Gorgon Stair video, right? Where you have a backdrop, where you're filming over an existing huge image, and we'll get to that in a second, we'll talk about that. And then to have the other video of the drone and syncing the 2 events of the objects floating around it, and then the moment where it disappears, syncing that, not that hard to do. If you come from a...
Why didn't the corridor crew do it then?
Well, look,
let me be clear. I was promised by Julian Dory in person that he was going to have a major VFX studio recreate the videos. While I was sitting right next to Julian Dory, he said this to my face. He said they were going to do it. And weeks later, nothing happened. And I kept wondering what. Then I went on Danny Jones and I knew what. They had planned a little trap for me or whatever, and they had this pre-recorded video, and I was already ready with all these stupid things that he brought up. And then, do you know why they delayed their video again? Because I refuted all the points in the Danny Jones video, and they knew they were going to look stupid. So they redid the entire video, and even after all of that, they couldn't even recreate 5 seconds of even one of the 2 of the videos.
By the Queen's crusty slippers, blast my biscuits and stuff me in a Tesco bag! We've got yet another flag on the field. The refs are signalling this one's going to be an unsportsmanlike penalty on the visitors. Christ on a bicycle! These penalty flags sure are going to have to go into the wash after this one. What with how many times they're hitting the pitch today and all.
And here we go again. Ashton's favorite campfire story, the great Danny Jones podcast betrayal of 2023. A tragedy so profound, so emotionally devastating, that he has apparently never recovered. Forget the loss of a 777 and 239 people. The real injustice, according to Ashton, is that the corridor crew hurt his fucking feelings. This was a real demarcation point in Ashton's life. I know that sounds like hyperbole, but it really isn't. Ashton was so scarred by that podcast interview, so utterly shook, that he stuck entirely to softball and cupcake podcast appearances ever since. In fact, it'd be fair to say that this podcast here with the sneezing monkey is the most pushback that Ashton's gotten about the MH370 videos since Danny Jones absolutely bodied him. This is where the cope reaches terminal velocity. He's still, to this day, spinning this event like some grand conspiracy. They were scared of me. They were intimidated. The corridor crew would only do a video and send it in. They were too afraid to face me in person. No, man. Hell the fuck no. Nobody was running crisis protocols, and sure as shit, nobody was running from Ashton. They just did a remote segment because that's how 90% of podcast analysis works. It's not that deep, Trey. But Ashton can't accept that. He's got to rewrite it into this martyrdom arc where he's the lone visionary, shunned by actual and legitimate VFX wizards and professionals because he's supposedly revealing truths too cosmic, too dangerous, too paradigm-shattering for them to handle. Meanwhile, the reality is the corridor crew watched the videos, said, "Yeah, this is VFX, nothing in here is physically real," and then moved on with their day. That's it. That's the whole story. But Ashton needs it to be this legendary showdown. In his head, he basically imagines himself walking into the corridor crew's studio and all the computers catching fire from the sheer intensity of his galaxy brain insights. Instead, they just didn't think it was worth their time to show up and discredit the Grifter. They could do that just fine remotely. And that, not the physics, not the evidence, not the lack of debris, not the basic aviation impossibilities, that is the wound that his ego will not allow to heal. So now we get this melodramatic revisionist history that's harder to follow than the plot of a Michael Bay film. No, it's because the videos are CGI, and the professionals in that field saw it instantly. You don't need Ashton in the room to identify a stock 3D model of a Boeing 777 taped over a static aerial photo. But he keeps bringing it up, again and again and again. Every time he mentions corridor crew, you can practically hear the tiny violins. It's less a point of argument and more like emotional scar tissue he won't stop picking at. If there's any moment that perfectly captures the fragile ego of the fragile little man behind this whole fragile theory, it's this one right here. A grown man still catastrophizing that a YouTube podcaster didn't smile and nod the entire time that Ashton cosmic fucking mad-libbed his way through the show. That's not evidence. That's not a clue. That's not a smoking gun. That's just pure, unfiltered, industrial-grade grievance coping. And it tells you everything you need to know about the guy who'd have you believe that magic plasma orbs disappeared a Boeing 777 in mid-flight, and then get all pissy the moment you ask for anything even remotely resembling evidence to back it up.
All dispersal patterns look the same. This is like saying that my butthole is your butthole because they're similar, right? It's not, we don't have the same butthole because of that.
You know that feeling when someone is so committed to a bad argument that they just cannonball ass first and legs tucked into the deep end of irrelevance? Yeah, this is one of those moments. Danny Jones throws out a perfectly normal, perfectly reasonable question about visual similarity, and Ashton responds by diving into anatomical metaphysics. Buttholes, specifically. Of all the words in the English fucking language that Ashton could have used to create just one of any number of bullshit explanations that his mind could cobble together, Ashton went with the physical appearance of the human poop chute. You simply cannot make this shit up. Smash cut to, I swear to God you can actually see Danny's soul briefly leave his body. That 1,000-yard Gorgon stare of a man thinking, my God, this is my podcast, and the shit this jagoff says here could reflect on me. What the fuck have I done? What's really wild is that this is supposed to be the strong part of Ashton's argument. This is the big rebuttal, his ace in the hole, or ace in the butthole, and it's basically a junior high locker room analogy delivered with the confidence of a man unveiling a unified field theory at Cosmic Summit. Meanwhile, hundreds of thousands of viewers are just sitting there watching Danny's brain buffer as it tries to process what the fuck Ashton just said, to process how the conversation just derailed into that. This is what happens when you run out of facts and start improvising with whatever words your mouth finds first. Buttholes. You resort to buttholes.
So don't come at me with how easy it is to make the videos with, I worked in VFX. Get the hell out of here, man. I'm telling you the videos are real.
It's all good. It's all good. It's just, I'm also pointing at other things. Like, for example, you say you know the video is real. It's not like you heavily assume the video is real. You say you know the video is real. You also said you know the video is military footage. Like, how do you know it? If you look that stuff up, actually there is no tangible, credible, 100% convinced evidence that this is military footage. This is an assumption, yet you say it is.
What is your criteria? What would you take? This is a great question.
All right, this seems like as good a place as any to wrap this up before we end up spending 90 fucking minutes correcting a guy who's already decided he's above reproach, above correction, and above basic reality. If you've watched this far, genuinely, thank you. I put a lot more time into this than I originally planned. This was supposed to be a couple of short segments cleaning up some of Ashton's nonsense, but the further I went, the more lies, distortions, and half-baked claims I found that weren't being challenged in the moment and felt compelled to correct them. And let's be honest, that's probably because everyone in that conversation knew that if you pushed too hard on the facts, Ashton would have melted down and rage quit on the spot. so I get it. It's a lot easier to just nod along and let the nonsense slide. The sneezing monkey isn't some shill or hack. I truly believe he's good people. So I'll end it this way. If you think any of my corrections are wrong, or anything I said was not true or even unfair, by all means, tell me. Show me where, show me how, and show me evidence why. Not vibes, not word salad, not ad hominem attacks. Evidence. Fucking evidence. Because I'm more than happy to argue it out in the arena of ideas, where facts fuck feelings like it's their job. Unlike some grifters we know. Speaking of which, hey, Trey! Beard Monkey's been binge-watching The Wire, and he's channeled his best Omar Little for you, to remind you that he's been challenging you to a debate, and you're nowhere to be found. Go on, Beard Monkey. The floor is yours.
I'm out here in these streets every day. Me and my lonesome. And where he at? Huh? Y'all put this in his ear. Ashton Forbes is not a man for this debate. You dig? I'm in the streets waiting. And just like a little bitch, he ain't nowhere to be found.
Thanks again for watching. And remember, Ocean Infinity's new search for MH370 begins on December 30th, 2025. Less than 4 weeks from now. Stay tuned for our next video where we'll discuss exactly what makes Ocean Infinity's second search markedly different and much more promising than their 2018 search. Spoiler alert, it's a lot more than you realize. Until next time.